Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Rotoworld Football Show. I'm Patrick Daugherty, joined as always by Denny Carter. We will be joined later in the show by Mr. Eric Samulski to talk about some streaming defenses for the fantasy playoffs. Good defenses that might have poor matchups that you might not want to play. Maybe slightly worse defenses that have some good matchups. All the in between as well. So Eric's going to tell you everything you need to know about playoff defenses. Denny and I are going to break down two wild Monday Night Football games. Two games that had like the same score for like a very long time.
Yeah.
Very strange.
And they were within seconds of each other.
Yeah,
if you were watching the box score, it would be like 19 seconds left in the first half. The other game had 17 seconds. It was crazy.
It was very crazy. Inconceivable Dolphins loss, we'll say. A stirring Giants victory. Mr. Tommy DeVito taking the nation by storm. Boy, is Daniel Jones in hell, man. He's just in hell. And we're going to get to all the news from the week. Justin Herbert done for the season. The Houston Texans an injury crisis. Jake Browning facing a really stiff test this week against the Vikings. Joe Flacco's effect on the Browns offense. Odell Beckham versus Zay Flowers and much more. It actually might not be much more than that. It's probably going to be just about exactly that. Denny, I wanted to riff about Tommy DeVito, but we have to talk about him for real in a few minutes. So I think we'll just start with the Dolphins' 28-27 loss to the Tennessee Titans. This was legitimately one of the most inconceivable NFL losses I've ever seen when they went up 27-14 with 3 minutes after two just back-breaking Titans fumbles. The first Titans fumble was a back-breaker. Like that was a game ender. And they're like, well, just to be safe, we'll do it again. And we'll do it again. The Dolphins took advantage of both, but then the Titans just scored twice.
Easily.
And what is this? I don't know even where to begin. What is our Dolphins concern level? It was a really, really bad game by the Dolphins. So I will say they had not been playing well before these two Titans fumbles. So it was not like the Dolphins deserved to win this game. Just a really, really listless, uninspiring performance. For sure knocked Tua Tagovailoa out of the MVP race.
He was not in it.
He was probably never in it, but he's not in it for sure now. What is the Dolphins' concern level? An offense that kind of like last year came out of the gates just insanely hot, and has just been kind of like losing parts as the season has gone along.
I mean, look, you take Tyreek Hill out of this offense, and it becomes the most mid offense in the entire league. This is what the Zoomers are saying. When you have a quarterback who cannot produce anything out of structure, and I mean anything, okay? He is young Jimmy Garoppolo to it.
Oh man, come on, man.
He is. He can't do anything unless the play is just presented to him exactly the way that Mike McDaniel thought of it, conceived of it in his office 3 nights before that game. It is truly like a marvel that they've gotten this far with a guy who can't produce, who can't create yards, who can't create points unless everything goes exactly right. Tua is now through week 14, 22nd out of 33 qualifying quarterbacks in yards per attempt while under pressure. Okay. I just looked at all his under pressure numbers, right? Only 3 quarterbacks have a lower completion rate under pressure. Those quarterbacks, Pat, you may have heard of them: Jimmy Garoppolo, Bryce Young, and Will Levis. And Tua also ranks 33rd out of 33 qualifying quarterbacks in pressure rate faced, meaning that he rarely sees pressure, but man, when he does, it all collapses. And we saw that last night. It collapsed, and this offense cannot function when things are not perfect for Tua.
And this haven't been perfect a lot in the second half of the season. There's been a lot of games though. Like he wasn't challenged in the Jets game. He wasn't challenged in the Commanders game. They weren't perfect in the Raiders game somehow. He had a pretty good fantasy day, but gosh, he hasn't had more than 2 scores since before Halloween. Yeah. He has only 6 touchdowns, passing touchdowns over his past 5 starts. It has not been happening in fantasy. I've been kind of slow to adjust in the rankings. All 32 teams though are back this week. Tua he's still a set and forget QB1 because the floor is okay. The upside, in theory, is still there. But, man, I don't know. They have a rematch with the Dolphins this week. I don't feel like super great about Tua for the
A
first
rematch
week of
with-
the fantasy playoffs.
You
Yeah.
said rematch with the Dolphins. Who did you mean?
Excuse me, the Jets, the New York Football Jets.
Oh, I feel terrible. I feel terrible about that game. You kidding me?
I didn't misspeak, but the Dolphins are playing the Dolphins.
I'm sorry. That
I
is
didn't
analytics,
misspeak.
but
I don't ever misspeak. No.
But I couldn't. I was trying to rack my brain and be like, oh, you mean but I had no idea. So, yeah, no. This Jets defense is a real defense. We saw that last week against CJ Stroud and the Texans. I benched CJ Stroud in a couple spots because I just didn't like the matchup. And I know, look, I mean, you're probably not doing better off the waiver wire, but Tua is in a very bad spot this week.
He is, and this is an absolutely pointless debate that I've been kind of obsessed with for no reason. But like the Shanahanigans, like the quarterbacks of the Shanny system, Brock Purdy versus Tua, it's like not even close. Like Brock Purdy. I'm not only am I ready to. I threw in the towel that he's good. I admitted he was good. Like a week ago.
You're only 8 weeks behind.
Now I'm admitting that he actually really does deserve MVP consideration. And I understand all the counterpoints to it. Yeah. He's not even the best player in his own offense. It's Trent Williams. He's not even the most important skill player. It's Christian McCaffrey, but he's an MVP candidate.
Wait. You say Trent Williams is the best player on the team? Is that what you said?
Yeah, he is for sure.
Okay.
For sure.
I'll take
I don't think is really that controversial of a take.
I didn't know we evaluated offensive linemen.
They instantly lost 3 games when he was hurt. So I think even that kind of confirmed it a little. He's the best player on the team.
I still think it's Dak. But sure. Purdy is definitely in the conversation, and the Joe Montana comps are going to be wonderful this postseason.
The difference between Purdy and Tua and the difference between Purdy and Jimmy G is that Purdy loves to freelance.
He does.
I'm sure Kyle Shanahan is horrified and maybe a little mortified by it, but learning to accept it. Imagine Tua Tagovailoa throwing back across his body.
No.
It would never happen.
Well, you saw at the end of the game, at the end of the Titans game. I'm really not trying to bury Tua here, but that was the color commentator on the broadcast said, "What was that? What was that that whole setup? Like, you can't even pretend to throw a pass when you have to hustle up and run a play and convert a 4th and short to keep the game going. That wasn't even close.
No,
that was embarrassing. That was embarrassing for the Dolphins.
Well, that was Louis Riddick and Dan Orlovsky with Mr. Chris Fowler.
Riddick was making some good points that I think we should consider about Tua and his ability to do things on his own.
So what's going to happen when Tua just torches the Jets, though?
He's not going to.
No,
he's not going to. No, Tua's going to just favorite for later. Tua's going to fall apart.
What, man? Do you want to know what Tua's fantasy playoff schedule is?
Huh.
I don't know how this is real. This is versus Jets versus Cowboys at Ravens.
Well, sounds over to me.
Yikes! it's two over.
That's what they're saying.
Week 18 against the Bills too. You've said it's over for Tua. It seems a bit strong to me, but is it over for Devin Achane? He had 20 touches in week 13 in his return, 12 against the Titans last night. Found the end zone twice in week 13, did not find the end zone last night. Raheem Mostert returned to his battering ram role. Unsurprisingly, since he's come back from the injury, we haven't seen the explosive plays. We have seen the long-awaited, long-foretold regression. How do we regard Devin Achane heading into the fantasy playoffs? I ranked him as an RB1 for week 14. Feels really silly in immediate hindsight. What are we doing with him going forward?
I think we've seen Mostert and Achane take very distinct roles in this Miami offense. In a Miami offense that likes to be run heavy when it can be. In other words, when they can maintain some neutral or positive game script. Achane ran 22 routes against the Titans, saw 9 targets. Mostert ran 19 routes, saw 1 target. Interestingly, and just looking at how they were used, I sort of have a theory on Achane as being used as basically the wide receiver 3 behind Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle. 13 of Achane's 22 routes against Tennessee came from the slot or out wide. Okay?
They're actually doing it, huh? They're using a running back in the slot.
They're doing the thing that I got so upset about in this past offseason. When Arthur Smith was like, we're going to use Bijan in the slot. And I said that never happens, and now it's happening in two cases, and with Robinson and with Achane.
Never owned.
No. If you check my bio, Achane got all the 2-minute snaps against the Titans. Mostert had 5 goal line snaps to 0 for Achane. And so we know what's going to happen here. Achane's not going to see those goal line looks, but he is going to see a lot of passing down work. And targets, and he just didn't break loose last night. There were a couple, I think, close plays where they were real close to getting him into a spot where he could break loose against the Titans. Didn't work, but I'm not discouraged by his usage.
He had 9 targets last night. I didn't realize it was that many. There was a lot. I was missing the little details. The 2 games at once thing. Like, I know ESPN's trying to figure out how to make the most money off of like these Monday night doubleheaders. I would strongly suggest the not 2 games at once approach.
It's a little tough because you want to see both, and there's no way.
Yeah, this is my sacred couch time. I don't want to be trying to every time you flip, then the other game somehow it goes in the red zone, and you always miss the actually important plays. I don't know why they've given up on the true doubleheader. I guess they did not like the 10 p.m. Eastern start time. I didn't mind the Central Time Zone.
Well, yeah, but it was a crime against East Coasters.
Well, but I thought you guys are used to a World Series first pitch at 12:05 a.m. Eastern.
Right. The secret is we don't watch baseball.
Yeah, I walked right into that one.
You did.
Darn, that's a shame. Denny, is Will Levis making himself the 2024 starter for the Titans? We say stuff like this after he has a good game once. This has happened twice now. Will Levis has good game once, although he now has had good game twice. Is he going to become the 2024 starter?
I mean, probably. I think that he does. He has that dog. I mean, good grief, he has that dog. He basically runs like a running back with lowering his shoulder into defenders. I think he does what Mike Vrabel likes a quarterback to do, which is not much. And Mike Vrabel doesn't, for all the good things that he's done as a coach, he doesn't want an offense that gains a lot of yards, puts up a lot of points. He's just been very clear. I don't want that. And so I think that Will Levis can run an offense like Vrabel wants, which is the Tannehill sort of offense under control, very balanced or very run heavy, depending on the matchup. I think that Levis is that kind of guy. He also just fits. I just feel like he just fits the Titans. I don't know.
He does.
He is a Titan.
Him and Vrabel were broing out on the sidelines, actually, in a way. Like Ryan Tannehill, he'd be like, "Get off your reading glasses. You're reading a book over here. What's this all about?"
Right.
Will Levis. I mean, forget a pot of coffee. It seemed like in his postgame interview, he just drank an entire pot of that really dangerous Panera lemonade.
Lemonade, yes, the killer lemonade.
Yeah, the killer. I think it's this killer lemonade. Don't sue us, Panera, please. Actually, please sponsor us. But you should maybe consider putting less caffeine in your lemonade. But he had just drank an entire pot of that, and he was vibrating off my television screen. He was like, wow. I mean, I know the adrenaline's coursing through your body after that dub.
Let me tell you something about my guy Will Levis. He did not go to bed last night.
No,
he
did not. No, he did not.
He didn't sleep.
Denny, for a bit, you've done the meat mountain. Do you need to maybe drink a quart of the heart attack lemonade?
No, I don't know. That put myself in real danger. I'd have to do that in a hospital.
You in a hospital, just do it in the hospital parking lot. You did the other one from a parking lot.
Yeah, I could stream myself in a hospital gown, drinking the lemonade with 3 doctors looking on, jotting down notes as I
just park in the ambulance bay at the local hospital, and then get arrested. Of course, you flatline as you're getting arrested from the lemonade. Is this getting too
that got dark.
That did get very dark, man. I was at Panera recently. They have a warning sign up in the restaurant. Maybe you just shouldn't sell it.
Just don't sell the lemonade.
Yeah, maybe you just shouldn't sell it.
People are like, I'm afraid for my health. Don't do that.
Yeah, do not do that. Do not go away, because we will be right back after this. This holiday season, get the fantasy fan in your life, the exclusive Rotoworld Draft Guide bundle featuring expert analytics, player insights, and season-long tools. Get all 3 of the draft guides for one low price. Go to NBCsports.com/holiday bundle and use promo code HOLIDAY23 at checkout to receive 25% off and a $10 Fanatics gift card. So Dolphins, Titans, weird game. Not a lot of takeaways. Takeaways are getting fewer and farther between this late in the season because we know these teams very well. I feel like we don't quite know the Packers very well because we're getting a totally different Jordan Love with and without Christian Watson. You think that's fair to say? Or Jordan Love's hot streak, it didn't necessarily come to like a screeching halt, but it was his worst game in a while in New York last night. He had one passing touchdown. Did he have a rushing touchdown? I can't remember. No, only one touchdown last night. His fewest passing yards in like over 2 months. Is it fair to declare that a trend? It's not something to be concerned about Jordan Love for his future, I guess, at this point, because it's a good sign that he can be really good with a receiver like Christian Watson. But are we declaring this a trend that Love is not nearly as streamable when he doesn't have Christian Watson?
Yeah, no, I mean, all the downfield stuff goes away. It just does. Like, I know Romeo Doubs, I heard some chatter late last week about like, oh, Doubs will just take on the Watson role, but that Doubs doesn't do that. Like,
they don't like Doubs. They don't like him.
But also Christian Watson coming into the NFL was an unbelievable prospect from a speed standpoint, and Doubs was not exactly. So the top has been sort of lopped off the Packers passing attack with Watson out. Jaden Reed last night against the Giants was clearly the number 1 receiver, and man, do they like to give that guy some end arounds. Whew, very into that. So, but Reed ran 70% of the routes, only saw 6% of the air yards, but 10 targets to lead the team. Dobbs saw 7. He caught 8 of them for only 27 yards. He had the rushing touchdown. Wait, did he also have a receiving touchdown? I think maybe he did.
Jaden Reed did not have a receiving touchdown. He only had the rushing.
Okay.
We're really trying to make him Debo 2.0.
Yeah. And I mean, LaFleur has said like Jaden Reed is like my war horse or something like that. Like he really, really is into Jaden Reed. So I think we should kind of listen to that and just know that as long as Christian Watson is out, and maybe when he comes back, the Packers are committed to forcing the ball into Jaden Reed's hands.
Like you said, they had kind of been doing it even before Christian Watson went out. Yeah, Dobbs this week, he doesn't crack probably the top 40. He's right around. He's a legit wide receiver 4, but he's not getting in the top 36 the way Jaden Reed is. And the Packers this week are playing the Buccaneers, so a good matchup.
It is.
Jaden Reed will definitely – he might be cracking the top 30 actually at wide receiver. So Jaden Reed, he is – I was going to ask you which Packers wide receiver is the one we want to be playing. It's definitely Jaden Reed.
It is.
Dontavian Wicks, maybe like a dark horse top 50. Like if you really need some like mega upside off your bench, but also a 0-point floor.
Yeah, and then Malik Heath sort of came in there and took some routes away from Wicks. So that's a little tough. But if you have Reed and you sort of had him on your bench for a while, maybe you started him here or there. I mean, now coming into the fantasy playoffs, he's like a rock solid PPR option.
He is. Producer Adam reminds us Dontavian Wicks injured his ankle last night, and I don't know if you know this. I have friends. I was watching the game with friends for once. It's very hard to get to watch games when you cover the NFL. Okay. And they were like, "Who the hell is Malik Heath?" And I was like, "I know who he is. Of course, I know. I know every player is. I know who Malik Heath is and why he's getting end zone targets right now." I'll be right. I got to go to the bathroom real quick. I went and looked him up. And like, oh, he's an undrafted free agent out of Ole Miss. I'm surprised you didn't know that, friends.
Wait, me?
No, my friends who were asking me.
I'm a Malik Heath truther. No one knows more about Malik Heath than I do.
No one knows more than you do about Malik Heath. Speaking of truther, finally, we waited too long on the show to talk about Tommy DeVito.
Yes.
I'll start with this. I'm not saying this is a bit, and so give a serious answer. Is Tommy DeVito better than Daniel Jones?
I mean, I think that the Giants offense functions more like a professional team with Tommy DeVito than with Daniel Jones. I have some numbers if you like.
I would very much so.
I texted you before the show. I said I have, quote, the goods
And then I quote left you on read.
You did, which
Didn't mean to do that. I forgot to respond.
didn't make me mad. I wasn't mad about that.
I forgot to respond.
So, all right, listen. Look, these are just the numbers, okay? If you could get mad at me, but I'm just delivering the news here. Daniel Jones was 34th in adjusted EPA per drop back before his season-ending injury. 34th. The only guy worse was Zach Wilson. DeVito, since taking over, and this includes that really rough start against Dallas. DeVito, since taking over, is 16th in adjusted EPA per drop back. That's right around Gardner Minshew. Okay. It's actually a little bit above Gardner Minshew. When you look at net adjusted yards per attempt, this is like a very telling stat as to how efficient a guy is at when he passes the ball. Daniel Jones was at 2.6 net adjusted yards per attempt before his injury. 2.6. That is unimaginably low. Okay. DeVito is around 5, which isn't great, by the way. It's not great, but it's not 2.6. What I'm saying is Tommy DeVito has been better this year. And I think that it shows, from a real football standpoint, it shows that teams cannot just completely fold after their quarterback has one good game in the playoffs.
No, I know. And they also just can't fold when the starter goes down. It's what we saw with Tommy DeVito, of course, his infamous first appearance where they totally Zach Wilsoned him.
Yeah.
And would not let him throw. And it shockingly was a total fiasco. You might need the quarterback in a football game to occasionally throw the football. And so they have been rewarded. They're actually winning games by letting Tommy DeVito throw. And I don't know if Tyrod Taylor or Tommy DeVito are truly, quote, better than Daniel Jones, but I just know they highlight his limitations so much. Like,
right.
Tyrod Taylor is almost as conservative as Daniel Jones, but he's more accurate than Daniel Jones. So I think he did a better job moving the chains in that regard. Tommy DeVito's just more aggressive. He actually tries to make big plays. He has like that dog in him. I just don't know, like, what is it that Daniel Jones does here is what I just don't understand. I mean, he had a career year last year. A lot of guys never have their career. They just don't even ever have a good season. Daniel Jones did, but it felt like they were hitting on 17 at the time. And it just really, really seems like now that they hit on 17 and have gone bust, and that Tyrod Taylor and Tommy DeVito, the team has been, like you said, unquestionably more fun to watch with both Tyrod Taylor and DeVito, and that cannot be a good sign.
I mean, DeVito, like, they're going to beat the Saints this week.
Yeah, they are. I'll give you that game, by the way, so you can see Derek Carr yelling some more.
Yeah, please, yes, that'd be great. And well, mostly I just want to see Taysom. Please play Taysom. Please play. Yeah, they're going to beat the Saints. And they could beat pretty much anyone except for like the elite teams right now.
You're that DeVito pilled?
Oh, I'm DeVito pilled.
Wow.
And you know what? It's the vibes. Greg Rosenthal from NFL Network said this is the Giants Saints matchup will show the power of vibes, and the Giants have all the vibes right now. I mean, it's fun. They're having fun.
They are.
You know, they're doing the Italian thing. They're running around. You know, it's a good time, and no one's having fun in New Orleans. No,
it's New Orleans. It's pretty hard not to have a good time in New Orleans, and Derek Carr has made it possible. That game is sadly in New Orleans. I really, really wish that game was in New Jersey.
Oh man.
It'd be the final desolation of the New Orleans Saints if it were in New Jersey.
It would.
The fact that it's at home does give them a chance.
Yeah.
But the DeVito train ends the season at New Orleans, at Philadelphia, versus the Rams, versus the Eagles. So pretty tough schedule. And some complex defenses, some complex defensive minds he's facing.
If I were the Eagles, I'd be paying attention to.
The Eagles' vibes aren't necessarily bad, but the Eagles, man, that was pretty rough what the NFL did to the Eagles. That's 5-game slate on their schedule they just had. I really think that's what's going on with the Eagles. I mean, of course, the defense was already regressing this year, but they played the Cowboys, the Chiefs, the Bills, the 49ers, and the Cowboys again. Like, how are you supposed to emerge from that slate standing? And they went 3-2 during that 5-game slate. Yeah. But it's not surprised that they just like look and feel like totally battered right now, the Eagles. And that's about as brutal of a 5-game stretch as I've ever seen in the NFL. But Tommy, we'll see how far this goes. Daniel Jones, he's just screwed. Like, the New York Post is like every day having like a new like crazy back tabloid headline. Like, it's just over for Daniel Jones, man.
It is, but he's going to be the quarterback there for the next 2 years at least.
I think only next year. He has $36 million guaranteed next year. Next year's the year they can't get out of. I do think they can get out of it in 2025. And I wouldn't be shocked if he became the $36 million number 2 next year. Not to begin the year. Man, this guy's leash is going to be so short to begin the season.
Yeah, it will be. It will be because Dable's job will be riding on next year on what they can do next year. Maybe he eventually they have to put him up in the backup role. But congratulations on Daniel Jones for getting paid. That's what I'll say.
Yeah, congratulations. Actually, like no joke.
No,
like,
I mean,
congratulations.
He capitalized. He had a good game against the Vikings in the playoffs, and he got paid. What? What? That's what happened.
He had a few more good games than that, but man, he wouldn't have if they had Brian Flores. We'll get to that in a minute. What Brian Flores is doing on the defensive side of the ball for the Vikings. Justin Herbert done for the season. He had never missed a game as starter. He already had a broken finger on his non-throwing hand, a broken finger on his throwing hand. Did the job. The season's already over anyway for the Chargers. So like, who cares? But this is an offense that was Justin Herbert was falling out of the top 12 even before his injury. And really, not to be a Herbert excuse maker, it wasn't because of anything he was doing. Supporting cast is just a total joke. And now what is the state of the Chargers without Justin Herbert for the final 4 games of the season?
It's not good, is what I would say. But I do have some hope for Keenan Allen, at least, which is really all that matters here. I know folks who have Keenan Allen thought that they were set up pretty good for the fantasy playoffs, and not as much right now. But I do have a little bit of good news. If I could find it in my notes, there it is. Easton Stick, who came in and Easton Stick, look, folks are asking, is he a real person? Yes, he is a real person. Okay. And that's his name. And I appreciate it if you don't make fun of Easton Stick. He came in, he threw 24 passes against the Broncos last week. He did make some catastrophic errors, but as far as targeting goes, he targeted Keenan Allen on 10 of his 24 attempts. That's a 41% target share.
We like that.
We do like that. And a lot of them were very close to the line of scrimmage when we like that as well. Easton targeted Austin Eckler on 5 of those 24 throws. That's a 21%. So when we combine those two numbers, we get 62%. And that's a pretty, I think that we can kind of, from a fantasy standpoint, we can kind of work with that. Just a bunch of checkdowns from Easton Stick keeps Eckler alive and keeps Keenan Allen alive.
He's got the feisty Raiders defense, but they're not that feisty on Thursday night. Then they have the Bills on Saturday in week 16. Then they got the Broncos for the fantasy finals in week 17. That's going to be a bit of a problem.
It is.
Keenan Allen and Austin Eckler.
The Broncos since week 8 are by almost every measure the best defense in the NFL.
Man, so we'll just stick in that vein because since I believe like week 4, the Vikings have been like almost historically good, correct? Yes. I think they've been like stunningly dominant since week 3 or 4. And this brings me to, I don't know if you have any stats on the Vikings defense, but also Jake Browning. He got home again in week 14, but where it was 4 good quarters against the Jaguars for Jake Browning. Mm-hmm. It was more like 4 good throws for Jake Browning against the Colts, and they were all screens with like 40 yards of yak. Does the Jake Browning party, which was already kind of winding down against the Colts, does it end outright against Brian Flores and the Vikings this weekend?
Yes, but also I think you're actually overselling Browning's performance last week. I think it was like 150 yards of yak on some screen throws. So, I mean, he's doing what he's asked to do, and he doesn't. I'm sure Jake Browning doesn't care about stats at all. Like he just desperately wants to win for his team. But he will be in hell this week. And I want to warn folks, like if you've been like in a really tough spot and you've had to start Jake Browning either in like a 1 quarterback or maybe a super flex league over the past couple of weeks, and you gotten away with it, and it felt so good. You gotta bail. You have to bail right now. I'm telling you that you have to find another option because he's not going to get it done against the Vikings. I mentioned that the Broncos somehow are the best defense in the NFL since like late September, early October. Well, the Vikings are the second best. Okay. And if you look at EPA numbers, drop back EPA, rush EPA overall, it says they're really good. Brian Flores is using a mix. This is according to the film bros, a mix of exotic blitzes and zone coverages that are just putting quarterbacks in a blender. Aiden O'Connell looked honestly clueless. I had that game on Sunday, clueless against Minnesota. He had no idea what was coming. Okay, and he tried to adjust. Oh, you get here, you get, and no, he had no. The Raiders had no counter to what Brian Flores was doing. So I really do think that we have to look at the Vikings defense way differently than we're used to.
We do. And boy, the Vikings, they fired the old guy once. They had like that, I think it was Ed Donatel. Mm-hmm. And they basically scapegoated him after their loss to the Giants last year, but it was a very good decision.
It was. It turned
Brian
out.
Flores did the same thing in Miami. He put quarterbacks in a blender.
Yes.
That's why I was so stunned he was fired. Dolphins fans at the time, though, were like, yes, he's great at defense, but he hates scoring points.
He does.
So much. And that was his downfall as head coach. But he'll get a second opportunity.
He will get a second. And I hope that he hands the offense over to someone and says, okay, that you do all that stuff and I'll manage the team and the defense. Because wow, I mean, he really, really can just confuse the hell out of quarterbacks.
He can't. Sticking with quarterbacks, we have not touched on CJ Stroud's concussion, Nico Collins' calf injury, Tank Dell, of course, out for the season. Makes it really hard to know what to do with the Texans heading into the fantasy playoffs. They have the Titans this weekend. The total is currently only 37.5. I mean, let's start with if CJ Stroud is cleared and plays. Let's assume Nico Collins is out with his aggravated calf issue. Is CJ Stroud and can we possibly put him in the top 12? With his limited supporting casting coming off the head injury.
No, I don't think so. I think you have to. I mean, you probably don't have a better option, but like he can't be a top 12 play. I really do think that the Texans season largely ended with the Tank Dell injury.
They are running out of gas. Yeah, I know, man. Tell me, me too.
I mean, all my best ball teams died as well, along with the Texans' playoff hopes. So you lose Dell, you lose Nico Collins to the calf. It's the same calf he hurt earlier this year. It's over probably for Houston, and Noah Brown and or Robert Woods will be their wide receiver one going forward.
And Noah Brown and Robert Woods, this is not a joke, combined for one catch for -2 yards against the Jets. Tough matchup, but Noah Brown. Everyone keeps hearing me make the same joke over and over again. But to use Kyle Dworchak didn't make this phrase, but he popularized it. Noah Brown is, quote, zero balled in back-to-back games since returning from his knee injury.
And because of that, Noah Brown may or may not be in the regression files tomorrow on NBC.
I know, just like we got to play him this week is the problem.
You have to.
0 catches on 7 targets the past 2 weeks, but you absolutely have to play him against the Tennessee Titans. We regret to inform. I can't wait to read what you wrote about that situation.
Oh, it's bleak.
It's a very disturbing situation. I have CJ Stroud, by the way. This is my initial rankings. I'm as the QB 18. I have him behind such luminaries as Baker Mayfield and Joey Flacco. Oh, yeah. No, listen. If you have Flacco on the wire, I'm actually in this position in one league. I'm playing Flacco over Stroud. So let's just stick with Flacco. What has been the Flacco effect on the Browns offense? Can they possibly keep throwing 40 times a game? We know that they almost certainly want to go more run heavy, but they just might not even have the personnel for that. The Bears defense, along with the Vikings defense, along with the Broncos defense, has been a big second half improver. Can we hit on 17 again with Joe Flacco this weekend against the Chicago Bears, Denny? I think so. I mean, the Bears defense has improved, but it's primarily their rush defense that has improved. They are slowly becoming a pass funnel. And this is not to say that teams are picking on the Bears pass defense. They're not, but they are turning toward the pass. So I think that, in other words, we're going to see another pass heavy script for Cleveland. Before Flacco came in, Cleveland was 4% under their expected dropback rate on the season. Okay. Since Flacco has been under center, they're 6% over that expected dropback rate. Man. That's a huge shift. Okay. Fourth highest neutral pass rate over the past 2 weeks. Wow. So it's not like they're getting behind and they're just having to throw. They're throwing when the game is neutral, when the game is within 7 points, in other words, and it's early downs, and it's on the early down. So it's lots of pass volume. It's so good. It's so good for Njoku, for Cooper, possibly for Elijah Moore if he can ever catch one ball. Elijah Moore got the classic Joe Flacco got a real receiver once. Amari Cooper came back.
Yeah.
He just immediately locks on to Amari
Right.
Cooper.
Once Cooper was cleared, I kind of bailed on Moore for several reasons. But
reasons.
But yeah, and also I wanted to mention both the Bears and the Browns are in the top 5 in plays allowed to their opponents. So we are going to see a lot of plays, just like we saw last week. We saw an insane number of plays between Jacksonville and Cleveland. I think we'll see something similar this week.
That was an insane number of plays. That was a strange game. That was a really, really strange game. Joe Flacco is a strange guy. Man, the Jets. I guess I could see how Joe Flacco and Aaron Rodgers couldn't coexist in the same locker room because there was Joe Flacco. Was it Joe and Lamar? Where Joe's like, I'm not going to mentor this guy.
Yeah.
Like mentor. Like, that's not my job.
That's right.
Or maybe he did that with the Broncos. I heard Joe Flacco was just straight up like, I'm not. I think it was Drew Lock. I'm not mentoring Drew Lock. Like, you crazy?
Yeah, you're right.
Freaking crazy.
But he also was obviously not pleased about being run out of town in Baltimore as well.
No.
But really, with the Jets situation, I actually think that they were in a spot now. In hindsight, they were in a spot where they couldn't bring in someone who was good. They couldn't bring in
they could not for ego reasons. Yeah,
right. It's like they had to roll with bad quarterbacks to make Aaron Rodgers feel good.
They did. No, I'm 100% believe that theory.
Yeah.
Well, they signed up his guy, his drinking buddy, like Tim Boyle or his Aluska, but however you pronounce that.
Yeah.
That hallucinogen. They got Tim Boyle. Tim Boyle, don't sue me. I have no idea what you do off the field, what your consumption habits are. But like, yeah, he's not going to get hurt. Just sign Tim Boyle. Who cares? And he's instantly hurt.
But in this way, Pat, it means that the Jets had to concede to a lost season once Rodgers went down. Because if they had signed Flacco does well, and there are some rumblings about like, well, how can you bench Flacco?
Oh yeah,
I mean,
that's the thing that's just so stupid. They would have benched him still.
Yeah, but, of course they would have.
They would be in the playoffs right now if they had made Joe Flacco the backup and not Tim Boyle. It's abundantly clear. They played really well with him last year. Just abundantly clear. We're almost ready for Eric Samulski, but real quick, break down Odell Beckham versus Zay Flowers. It remains a confusing situation to me.
It is. It is a weird situation because you have Flowers running all the routes. You have Beckham running like half the routes, which is just maddening because he's been super efficient, and that efficiency would go down if he were out there more. But over the past 3 weeks, Odell has 44% of the air yards, despite running 50% of the routes. Okay, the next closest guy on the Ravens is Rashad Bateman with 22% of the air yards. It's not close. Odell is seeing all the downfield stuff. They OBJ and Flowers have the same target share over the past 3 weeks, but OBJ is being targeted on 36% of his routes. That's one of the highest in the entire league. That's double the rate of Zay Flowers. I guess the takeaway is you can start both, but the OBJ's profile leaves something to be desired, I would say.
Zay Flowers does too. I feel like they're using Zay like exactly like he did at Boston College, which our friend Eric Froton described to me like it was a terrible offense. They had no coaching. They had no skill. So they had to just solely manufacture touches for Zay Flowers, but he's capable of more. But the Ravens are like, what if we just treated him like that still, even though we made him a first-round pick, and there's a lot of talent in this offense. And I feel like they need to be willing to open it up with Mr. Zay Flowers. So we're going to be willing to open it up with Mr. Eric Samulski when we return right after this. This Sunday is an AFC showdown of playoff implications when Lamar Jackson and the Ravens travel to Jacksonville for a date with the Jaguars. Coverage begins at 7 p.m. Eastern, only on NBC and Peacock. And don't forget, find all your favorite NBC sports shows on Amazon Music. Just head to amazon.com/NBC Sports. We are now joined by our friend and colleague, Mr. Eric Samulski. You may know him from such Rotoworld specialties as baseball and football, and blurbing with us every Sunday this season. He's a two-way. He's Shohei Ohtani. He's Shohei Ohtani.
When are you calling him that?
Of Rotoworld.com. Your contract is also 10 years, $700 million. Eric, I know we're not supposed to talk about that on the air, but
I've deferred all of it.
You've deferred even more than Shohei, we hear. Have you recovered yet mentally, physically, spiritually from the Bills' victory over the Chiefs on Sunday?
I mean, I had until basically everybody wanted to talk about how it was such a cool play, and didn't matter that the rules were broken. That we should have let it stand.
I agree. If a play is that cool, we got to consider it.
I will say we're seeing legendary levels of cope from the Chiefs. Truly legendary.
I've seen more screenshots of just players lined up offsides in the last 24 hours than I've seen maybe in the history of my football viewing up until now. It's crazy.
I think there were a few going viral from the Dolphins game last. I think Jalen Waddle's like landing on both sides apparently.
Yeah, and they're like all from different angles. Like one is down the line, some are like at a 45-degree angle. I'm like, I don't know where anybody's standing, but yeah, whatever.
I know. There's a lot of deceptive angles. Did you guys see? There's a Zapruder of Kadarius Toney like motioning to the ref, like being like, "We cool." Yeah, I don't know if the ref has any reaction. Well, they apparently interpreted that as he was cool.
I love that there's a lot of like, oh, he checked, and like multiple former NFL players are like, he pointed at the ref before he was even on the line of scrimmage. Then he didn't look at the ref to see if the ref said anything, and then he lined up. It's like, no, that's not checking. But whatever. I mean, hopefully, we'll get some football games in under our belt, and we'll start talking about something different.
Yeah, that was Abraham Zapruder's finest work, I think, finding Kadarius Toney sort of motioning to the ref and finding out if he was onside or not. But Eric does a weekly defensive rankings and streamers article for us, so he's an expert on this. And defenses, we've been talking about it on the show lately. Kyle and I have been talking about our Monday stream. They're more important this time of year. You're much more likely to carry 2 defenses this time of year. Some people might even cut roster dead weight and start carrying 3 defenses. Eric, let's just start with we'll do a few of these. Just who are some defenses with some of the very best setups and matchups for the fantasy playoff? Like, who is your favorite fantasy defense? Let's start there.
Sure.
For the fantasy playoffs.
We'll go with it, tomorrow morning on NBC Sports. You'll see an updated version of my playoff defense rankings. There is a version currently up there. Every week I've been updating it with kind of just updating what the points allowed are. So we kind of get an update of what the offenses, an accurate reflection of what the offenses these defenses will face are doing. My number one defense for the playoffs is the Browns. So I should probably, shout out the Browns. Their matchups are against the Bears, the Texans, and the Jets. Obviously the Bears are a little bit of a worse matchup. Because Justin Fields, since he's come back, they've been using him more on the ground. The Bears are only allowing the 15th most points to fantasy defenses over the last month, so they're not kind of like the smash spot they were before. The Jets are actually my second ranked defense. They face the Dolphins, but then they get the Commanders and the Browns the last 2 weeks of the playoffs, so that's really strong. And then rounding, the 49ers are my third. And then 2 that I think are under rostered, rounding out my top 5. The Chiefs are only 61% rostered right now. They've kind of let people down in the past, but they get the Patriots, the Raiders, and then the Bengals. And then the Broncos are only 10% rostered. Wow. They have been really good of late. They averaged 10.4 fantasy points per game over the last 6 weeks. They get the Lions, and then they end with the Patriots and the Easton Stick-led Los Angeles Chargers. And weirdly, the Lions are giving up the 7th most fantasy points to opposing defenses over the last month. It's risky because they could explode at any time, but they have really not been playing well.
They're terrible now.
Yeah. Well, okay. And Eric, I'm actually shocked that the Broncos are that available, 90% available. Of course, I want to mention, not in your league. Whoever's listening,
right? Of course not. Of course, not in your league.
The Broncos were drafted before Patrick Mahomes in your league.
So you've been riding the Broncos since the Jimmy Carter administration. I don't know where the media has been on this. They were the team of the decade of the 80s in the AFC. One of the teams of the decade of the 90s. Teams of the decades of the teens. By the way, one of the reasons nostalgia is dead, by the way, for the modern century is we didn't know what to call the decades.
Oh yeah, no, there are no more decades because we don't know what to call it. Except
we're back in the 20s now. I've still never heard anyone say the 20s, but I think they're going to start saying it soon. Anyway, I just took it very, very, very.
But okay. But folks, like if you're stashing a defense, it needs to be the Broncos because that is a great schedule. Mm-hmm. And like I mentioned earlier in the show, by many measures, there has been no defense better in the entire NFL than the Broncos over the past month or two.
Except for maybe the Vikings. The Vikings have at Jake Browning versus the aforementioned Lions. The Lions, apparently the way the Lions play is going to be the key to like the entire fantasy playoffs. Then at the versus the Packers in week 17. Do you have anything on the Vikings, Eric? Who've just been scarily good.
Yeah, I do. They're 15th for me only because the Jake Browning led Bengals are giving up the 16th most fantasy points. So they're pretty much right in the middle of the pack. We obviously know there's a lot of talented players around Browning. I think the last 2 weeks inflated them a little bit because the Jaguars and Colts secondaries are problematic, which kind of helped him boost his totals and the Bengals offensive totals. The Packers have, if you ignore last night's game, the Packers were playing really great football for about a month. So it's one of those things where was last night the true offense?
We've lost Eric again. Eric, we've lost you again. That's a shame. But I'll say I'm a Vikings fan. The Browning, they're ending the Browning thing, Denny. Then Goff, they're ending the Jared Goff thing once and for all. Jared Goff no longer getting away with it. Then even Jordan Love, they're ending the Jordan Love thing. He's not going to be the starter next year. No, that's not true.
Wow. Well, you really are on board.
Yeah, I'm all aboard the Vikings.
We're
back.
Are we back?
You just missed me saying that you're wrong about the Vikings. They're ending careers during the fantasy playoffs.
I don't know what this stupid expensive microphone keeps cutting out on me. The Packers thing also, just to say, are they going to be in the playoff hunt? Is Aaron Jones going to play in that week 17 game? I mean, that kind of adds a little bit to it as well. Is Christian Watson back? We don't know. He's never back. But if he plays, if they're full strength, that changes that matchup a little bit in terms of whether you want to play the Vikings or not. Denny mentioned the Broncos before. I love pairing defenses, right, in the playoffs. So the Dolphins, people have been riding the Dolphins forever and they've been really good. But that schedule after this Jets game this week is terrible. They play the Cowboys and the Ravens, and you really don't want to start them in either one of those. So if you could pick up the Broncos, and maybe you don't play the Broncos against the Lions this week, but then you play the Broncos against the Patriots and Chargers, and you jettison the Dolphins, you can kind of make those pairings work for you. And I think that's a really valuable strategy for the playoffs.
I did have a question real quick, Eric. Are there defenses that, folks have been relying on playing no matter what, week in and week out, that you would bail on right now, depending on their fantasy playoff schedule?
Yeah, I mean, the Dolphins are one after this week. The Cowboys, I might not bail on because we talked about that Lions matchup in week 17 as maybe more enticing than we thought, but the matchups against the Bills and the Dolphins are not great. So if you could find another defense for the next 2 weeks rather than the Cowboys, it's something I would do. The Saints are surprisingly rostered in 70% of leagues still. They really haven't been delivering of late, and the Giants are, Tommy Cutlets is really turning the corner. That's still a fine matchup, but then the Saints get the Rams and the Bucks, and those are below average matchups. So I don't love that. And then I would say another one with the Ravens end with week 16 and 17 against the 49ers and the Dolphins.
Yeah.
That's problematic. We saw the Dolphins last night, we assume in week 17 Tyreek will be playing, and so that will make that Ravens game a little more difficult. So it's another team where I might be looking to play the Ravens this week and then pivot.
One of my takeaways from listening to you talk is that we really, really need Jared Goff. We need his career to end during the fantasy playoffs. Basically, we need 2 or 3 straight. Because I'm saying there's a lot of games hinging on a Jared Goff is still good, and we need a bunch of 3-pick intercept games from him. It sounds like.
I thought you were going to say your takeaway was I need a new microphone for the holidays. One of your takeaways. I'll say as a deep league option, the Chicago Bears are only rostered in 4% of leagues,
playing a
which
lot better.
feels shockingly low. They've averaged 8.8 fantasy points over the last 6 weeks. They get the Browns, the Cardinals, and the Falcons. The Cardinals are weirdly not as good of a matchup for fantasy purposes as we'd expect because they haven't really been taking a lot of sacks or turning the ball over with Kyler back. But they're not an avoid matchup. they're just kind of not a smash spot. But the Browns have three decent to above average. Sorry, the Bears have three decent to above average matchups. If you're in a deeper format, I think that they could be a pretty sneaky option for you.
So I do think that one thing folks have to consider when they're kind of lining up these defensive matchups is like, is the quarterback on that team playing in a way that keeps the offense on time? Like when Justin Fields was disastrous earlier this season, the Bears defense was constantly in horrible spots and they were being destroyed from fantasy purposes, right? But now Fields is keeping things on time. He's not making backbreaking mistakes. He's running more. The offense is clicking. And so the defense is in good positions, right? And this is the opposite of what's happened with Detroit, where they were successfully hiding Jared Goff with good defense and not lots of running. Now they have not been able to do that, right? So now we can string defenses against the Lions, not necessarily because things have gone off the rails completely for the offense, but more so that the Lions defense is bad, forcing Goff to be the guy, and he can't be the guy.
Yeah. And you've seen that also happen with the Vikings, where the Vikings defense has become a team, or the Vikings have become a team we want to stream defenses against more recently because they're the offense is putting people in really bad spots. So that kind of adds to this other point that you're highlighting, Denny, which is like, it's the playoffs. You can't get too hung up on like, who got me here, right? I know you may have been rostering this defense for 6 weeks, but it's the same really as any other position in fantasy. It's great that you were, using such and such player for the last 4 weeks and they got you into the playoffs. If the matchup isn't good, you need to pivot, whether that's pivoting the player off your team entirely or to the bench. You can't just be beholden to like, well, this has worked for me in the past. We need to kind of adjust. And I think the biggest mistake that people make with targeting a defense against a quote unquote bad offense, which I want to highlight, is like, bad offenses in real football aren't always bad offenses for fantasy football. So for example, like I tweeted this out earlier today, we all watch the Steelers play and we're like, ooh, that's a bad offense. But they have the best turnover rate in the NFL, and they give up the 8th fewest sacks in the NFL because they're a super run heavy and cautious team. So when teams are really run heavy, they obviously don't drop the quarterback back as much to pass, which means fewer opportunities for sacks, which means fewer opportunities for turnovers. Run heavy games also bleed the clock more quickly. So there are fewer plays on offense. So there are fewer opportunities for defenses to kind of make interceptions and sacks. And so low scoring games are great for your defense, but they're great at providing a safe floor, right? The Cowboys aren't the number one scoring defense because they hold opponents to low scores. They're the number one defense because they're getting turnovers and touchdowns. Yes. And so if you're not getting those opportunities, it's like, cool, you're playing against the Steelers. That's 6-7 points, but maybe not 10, 11, 12 points. So you just need to factor that into your targets.
And that's what makes the Bears interesting this week against Joe Flacco and the Browns, is that there are going to be a ton of plays in this game, right? I actually think Flacco is a good play and the Bears defense is a good play. They can happen in the same game, folks.
It's the same thing. It's why we've loved facing Sam Howell. Eric highlights a super, just incredibly important point about defenses is that, you want to be facing teams they're going to have to throw a lot. And maybe they will put up some points, but like I said, the key is getting the sacks, getting the turnovers. Like sacking Tommy DeVito 9 times if possible is very, very good. He did
zero last night for Tommy Cutlets. Zero.
It is crazy. He's our guy is progressing shockingly quickly.
He looks so much better than he did before. I mean, we don't have to say,
Danny's in shambles. The Dimesman is in shambles. We've been talking about it the entire show. It's Jover for the Dimesman. It's real bad. Eric, any final thoughts on defenses, or I think did we leave it all out there on the field?
We left it all out on the field. Just a reminder, Wednesday morning, you can find the updated playoff defense rankings with a beautiful color-coded chart to go along with it, so you know which matchups are good or bad, and you can kind of like do a puzzle game and pair your defenses that way.
My last thought, real quick, guys. This happens. I would advise people not to have emotional attachments to the defense. Okay.
Oh yeah.
Just because the Cowboys have been good to you for most of this year doesn't mean you have to. You're not morally obligated to roll with them going forward. Okay. Like you got to detach yourself from that thing. Same with kickers. I don't care if a kicker was good for you last week. Okay, you play the matchups.
You do.
I'm gonna play Matt Gay again. -3 points. Who cares? We're gonna run it back out there.
Maybe bail on him. I don't know.
Matt Gay, we will never bail on Matt Gay. We'll never bail on our listeners, except for we have to right now because the show's over. We're out of topics. We left it all out there on the field. Check out Eric's updated defensive rankings on Wednesday. Check them out though right now too. If you're listening on Tuesday night, there's good stuff on the site. It'll just be updated on Wednesday. Check out Denny's regression files dropping Wednesday. Check out my rankings for the first week of the fantasy playoffs dropping Thursday morning. And then of course, check out our week 15 preview show when Denny, Kyle, and I break down the entire slate on Thursday afternoon. So for Eric Samulski, for Denny Carter, I'm Patrick Daugherty. Thank you so much for listening. We will be back later this week.